Hey everybody, it's Phil here with Hey Bay City. We have such a fun episode for you today with Andrew and Justis Heppner of Populace Coffee. Not only is it a great episode, but it coincides with launching the Hey Bay City branded coffee that they are roasting right here in Bay City that you can pick up at their cafe here in downtown Bay City, as well as purchase through their website, populace.coffee. Our conversation began talking about how these two lovebirds met and why they left Bay City and then came back. That part of the conversation was so good, it inspired us to plan a very fun series that's coming up later on, and we'll tell you more about that as that gets ready to launch. But for this episode, our conversation picks up right as Andrew and Justis have moved from Bay City to Venice Beach, California, and have decided to move back. I look forward to sharing this episode with you. It's a great conversation with two really incredible human beings, and thanks for listening.
Driving across the country was not as fun as I thought it was going to be. We were just in a mad dash to get there, but once we got there, it was great.
So here's
Still
kind of
no jobs when we got.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I kind of assumed that.
No jobs.
So how did you eventually end up back here?
So when we moved back there, I'll speed up through this. When we moved back to Venice Beach, she got a job right away, and I was still trying to find something. And I found this really interesting Craigslist posting, because you lived on Craigslist at that time in the world, right? And it was for a company called Intelligentsia, which still exists today. They're pioneers in the coffee world. Yeah. And they were opening a shop on Abbot Kinney, which is now like a very world famous destination. But at that time, there really wasn't anything on Abbot. And they're opening this cafe. And I was like, well, I can work in a cafe. I've worked in a cafe before. And as a dishwasher, I was like, okay.
Yeah,
he comes like $15 an hour. I was like, what?
But imagine my face, though. I get a job. He still didn't. And then he comes back and he was like, guess what? I have an opportunity at this cafe. And I was like, that's amazing. Like, the pay's great. What are you doing? He's like, I'm a dishwasher. And in that moment, I'm like, we moved out here? Yeah. And you're going to be a dishwasher? Huh?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Within about 4 months, I was the assistant manager at the shop, running shifts, learning from literally some of the best baristas in the world. At the time, I had no idea who these people were. And this is a shop that, like, there was at 9 menu items. Like, this was the antithesis of coffee shops at the time. There was nothing in the world like it. People were flying from Tokyo and all over Europe to visit this place, and I just kind of stumbled upon it, and I had no idea.
Wild.
And so fell in love with coffee there, really fell in love with coffee there. And then just sort of decided that, we wanted to get married. We got engaged out there. And then I just wrote a business plan up and was like, hey, who wants to throw some money into this crazy kid's idea? This is like 2009. So the economy just basically melted down like the year before. Yeah. Michigan was in a pretty terrible spot.
Yeah.
And he was like, Bay City needs good coffee.
Michigan is really was the play.
Yeah.
Because at that time, there was Madcap, which still exists now.
Yeah.
They were really the only great coffee in the state, and so we saw the opportunity. I saw the opportunity in this region, and we convinced there was 3 investors initially, and we raised like 40 grand or something like that. And and so we packed the same car back up and drove back to Bay City.
Literally gave all of our furniture and everything for free.
And this was also, Intelligentsia was expanding, and they wanted me to kind of take on part of their West Coast stuff. And I was like, nope, moving back to Bay City to open up a coffee company.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
Wild. And the rest is history.
Yeah.
Justis, people know you from being on TV, kind of.
Kind of.
Justis, how did you get into real estate? I mean, you kind of took the realtor world by storm, and here you are on HGTV. And how did you find your way to real estate? When
we moved back, I was a general manager for Hooters and I worked gruesome hours. We're talking 65-hour week minimum. Ugh. And this was really just so we could buy our first house, so he could start Populace. This is what we lived off of, right? And after I had Emerson, our first child, I was tired of never seeing him, you know, and this was when I was kind of looking at myself going, okay, I can keep doing this. The money's good. It's stable. It's allowing us to do all these things. But if I'm not happy, I can't be the best mom that I can be. And I wanted to spend more time with Emerson. And so I had to take a hard look at what my passion was, because he had his passion. And they, you know, our generation was told, go to college, get a desk job. And like, this is that mold didn't fit me, right? I worked in the corporate world for a long time, went into the restaurant industry, and I was like, I need to find something for me. And I've always loved all things home. Ever since I was a child, I was the 5, 6, 7-year-old moving furniture, rearranging my grandmother's house, and they all just let me. And I knew that that's what I loved to do, but our region didn't really have a market for interior design. But I could do it through real estate.
Yeah.
And so I was, while still working and had a newborn, I took my course online, passed, and through the state, and then got my license. And then I slowly made that transition out of the restaurant world and then into real estate.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Question for both of you then. Andrew, to you first, and then to you, Justis. So Andrew, here you are kind of with this path to coffee that involved Michigan and then out on the West Coast, and then you had your experience with Intelligentsia, and that really kind of flipped the switch for you. And you mentioned earlier that that's where you fell in love with coffee. What was it about coffee then, or what is it about coffee now that creates this feeling of love?
Well, now it's more than just about coffee. I think what we have realized and what I've really fully taken on is that the spaces that we have in these cafes are community spaces. And when I first started, it was all about like, look at how much I know about coffee. Look at how much we know about drinks. Look how expertly we can steam this milk, or look at where we source this. And, you know, it was always just about what we were doing, it was this pretentiousness that I actually was trying to get away from by calling it Populace. Like the whole goal of the brand was to be coffee for anyone, right? We wanted it to be great, but we didn't want to have to tell you that it was great. We just wanted you to know it was. And so I think the passion now comes from this ability to just kind of be a space that's always changing and evolving. And it can be, you know, a podcast studio one day, and it can be a pottery studio another day.
Yoga studio.
It can be a yoga studio one day. It's this community space that we really always wanted to create. But in the beginning, and even with our first go around with the cafe in Bay City, which is down the street now, we really didn't understand what we were doing. We were just like, let's open a coffee shop. It costs this much to make it, and we should sell it for this. And it's just not that transactional. Like, you need to understand the economics of the coffee shop, which is where most people have it. That's where most cafes fail. They actually do it the opposite. They focus too much on the brand up front and not enough on the economics. And we focus way too much on the economics and not enough on what we were trying to build. And I think once we realized that, that's allowed us to really grow with the love of the space. And honestly, COVID kind of killing some of our other shops, for lack of a better word. It's actually allowed us, it's caused me to appreciate this one even more. You know, we really wanted to build sort of an empire, but not really. We wanted to have strategically placed cafes throughout the state, which is why we picked Detroit and Bay City and then Petoskey. And then the goal was to go further and then to the west side. And we really wanted to have like 6 or 7. And then just decided, no, this is not the path for us anymore. So as soon as we change hands up north, we're really just going to focus on this space only and sort of reverse the tide on our business, which is focused entirely on e-com, the digital brand, and then this space is just the community space. And we'll continue to invest into the people here. And luckily we don't live off of this space, so we can take any money that this space does make, which it's on the brink of finally making money at some point. You know, we try really hard to pay our people right and well, and we don't want people to leave other than to grow and step forward, which that's all that's ever happened. Anybody that's ever left here has left because they're moving on to a bigger and better thing.
Very cool. I think it's the process of growth that anybody goes through with their business. You have this idea, but you don't know anything about your idea until you start doing it. And then you start doing it and you're like, oh, I messed that up. And you just fix this a little bit. And then sooner or later, you kind of fall into the place that you need to be, as opposed to thinking that, oh, I have this business plan and in 3 months I'm going to be washing myself in money and I'll have everything I want. Like it's messy and it usually takes a little bit of a long time. But man, yeah, very cool. For Justis, for you, know you from being on TV, being peppy and happy all the time on social media, talking about houses. For you, where does the love for real estate come in?
I think the love for real estate comes through homes. I love aspects of what home means for everybody, and that it can change over time, and being that person to kind of guide people through the process, but also being, you know, in love with design, kind of telling people like, hey, this home could work for you because it has this, this, and this. For resale purposes, it's this, this, and this. And really just sharing, you know, tips and tricks of where they can make improvements in their property to make them happier in the space. I think that that's really at the core of what I love about real estate. So for me, it's not transactional. I've always taken pride in the fact that I don't pay for generated leads. All of my business is literally referrals, because I want to work with people who want to work with me. And I think that it's worked out pretty well for the most part. And it's just being able to find that space that people are going to find themselves in the most is super cool.
I'm interested to talk to both of you about this, because this is the first time on the podcast where I've had a husband-wife duo, for one, but then also a husband-wife duo who also happen to be entrepreneurs. and I know from my experience, it's a, I don't want to say a situation, but it can be a challenge being an entrepreneur. If just one of you is an entrepreneur, it can be a challenge, because what are you doing, and is there money coming in, and is this a risk like we as a family are willing to take, and all sorts of stuff, the stress and whatnot. But here you are, both entrepreneurs. Talk to me a little bit about that. What's challenging about that? What is a blessing about that?
Jeez.
Justis is putting Andrew on the hot seat right now, just staring at him. Yes, Andrew, what do you think about this?
I think that the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship and people that are entrepreneurs, because you've met lots of them, I've met lots of them. That's my whole life, is working with entrepreneurs. They are naturally risk takers, naturally dreamers. Most of them have similar versions of all the crazy ideas that, you know, you talk to this person versus this person, they're going to have relatively similar thought patterns. So you can kind of start to really understand them the more you're around them. I call them, I call this term that entrepreneurs have, they're really good at false starts, right? Like in a race, you can prepare, you can think, and then you like just right out the gate, and then you give up, right? There's lots of those things.
It's that thrill of that initial idea.
It's the thrill of the idea, right? And I would say, and this isn't, you know, I think entrepreneurs all have different levels of that. I would put myself more on the wildly active side versus, Justis is much more methodical and strategic in the way she thinks about her ideas.
Yeah, I could see that.
Still similar ideas, right? But so in a relationship, I actually think it would be more difficult if I wasn't an entrepreneur and she was, and I would try to understand why she would even be thinking about something this wild.
That's true.
So I actually do find that as a blessing that we both have similar ways we look at the world. The issue is that you run into is if you both are in a valley at the same time. Yeah. Because that's a natural occurrence, right? Anytime you're in business and sales, whatever, you're going to have really good times. You're going to have real bad times. You're going to also have just boring times.
And not like Instagram bad where like you look at the post and you're like, yeah, this is a bad time, but I'm happy again. Like, no, it's really, really bad.
Yeah, it's not like, man, that post I did yesterday only got 42 likes. It's like worse than that. Yes. It's, you're like actually like, okay, finances, right? Yeah. And when your income isn't consistent, you have to plan, right? We have to look 6 months out, right? We're like, okay, we have to have this amount, etc.
Emergency funds,
sinking funds, all these different ways that we manage our household. And that's taken a lot of time to figure out. And so yeah, I mean, lots of good. The thing that I love the most about it is that I always feel like I had the opportunity to grow. And I had the opportunity to build something new. I was telling you about earlier, like that's just something that like I never want to lose that. And so, yeah, I don't know if your answer is going to be similar, but
it's not.
Yeah, very, very cool that you feel like you're coming at things from a different perspective, but a similar perspective, because entrepreneurs kind of live in a different world than employees do, and sometimes that can get lost in the mix. And so when you talk about risk and you talk about ideas and planning and things like that, the fact you have a shared experience can be a blessing, it sounds like. Justis, what do you think?
So I love that we have flexibility for our children through being entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that too.
I think that's probably a huge thing. There are a lot of times that it's very stressful because, for instance, in the summer, everyone wants to see homes in the evenings, on the weekends. Yep. And the last 2 years in real estate was so crazy that I was gone literally showing homes like 7 days a week, where our son had like a meltdown at the table crying because he's like, you're never home at night. But I'm like, but I'm home all day with you during the day. I'm here. And so it's like constant reminders on that. And we think a lot of in terms of being entrepreneurs and having ideas and grand scheme of things. I think we play a good balance too, because I'll always be the devil's advocate on a lot of things. And I know that he gets frustrated sometimes. So on a relationship level, I'm always like, hold on, let's think about this. What if, but that adds to the fun aspect of it too. So we're always communicating and always talking and just throwing random ideas. And, he has had so many ideas with Populace that obviously like we're both fully invested in. But he's also invested into the real estate side too, because even though I'm not just always working with clients, we have built wealth through our primary homes, and we've refinished and renovated that. We're on our third house right now. And our center house was the house that I like to say almost broke us. It was the labor of love project that was intense. Where he was like, no, pulling his hair out. And so it's nice to have, I get to do what I want to try to do. He does what he wants to try to do, but we're collectively supporting each other through it. But with that, there's obviously like ups and downs, but we're getting better. Yeah.
Andrew, if you had a piece of advice first to a budding entrepreneur, what would it be?
I mean, there's like the cliche, right? Like fail, just like get up and try things.
Yeah, pick yourself up.
I would say, go and try working in the job that you want. Say, for instance, you want to build a coffee company, go and work in a coffee company. Try and understand what you're trying to do, because there's no shame in like learning. I think that a lot of young entrepreneurs, and I was one of them, is always like, I'm just going to figure this all out on my own. And that's a really crippling thing. And where if you could just go and learn from all the people that have done it and even if they haven't done it super successfully, if they've managed a business for more than 5 years, like go and buy them coffee like 6 or 7 times and learn everything. You'll get so much out of that. And I mean, that's like the main thing that I would tell somebody is just really go and learn.
Yeah, you'll learn how to do it the right way faster, but then you also potentially can learn that this is not your shtick. Like, I hate coffee. I don't like the coffee world at all. I like this idea, but until you actually experienced it, you don't know. You think about that like in the healthcare system. All the time I talk to people who at one point wanted to be a nurse, and then on their very first day when they actually walked into a hospital and they saw a patient, they were like, I cannot be a nurse. This is not my place. And you don't know that until you actually step foot inside the industry that you want to experience or grow a business. You don't know that until you do it. And so go and do it and then figure it out from there.
Yeah, there's these really big cold calling based product sales companies, right? Like Cutco, or that's the first one that comes to mind. And there was a period of my life where I just needed to find jobs, right? And so sales jobs are pretty easy to find. If you're willing to work for free, commission, you can find them. And I remember I met this guy through a guy, I don't even remember his name, and we did this thing called the Day of Observation. That was what it was called. And it was essentially like, we won't even trust you enough until you can show us that you can even last one day driving around to businesses and trying to sell them cutlery without any, I mean, these are cold leads, right? Like you're walking into that place across the shop and you're like, hey, I'm Andrew. I have these knives.
And would you like to buy knives?
And so I did that for a day with this guy, and he was insane. I mean, people that are good at that are mind blowing if you just are around them.
Right.
Like I'm a sales guy, but I'm not an outbound knock on your door sales guy, right? Like I'm a wimpy sales guy.
Please buy these knives.
Yeah. Or I'd send an email like, hey, are you at your shop? I have
to
these
whom
knives.
It may concern.
Yes. And I realized in that moment, like, nope, this is not for me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this so I can, like, they were like, we're not wasting our time. If you can't even get past day one, then we don't want you here. And that's kind of always stuck with me. Like we don't do that with our employees or anything, but just on an entrepreneurial level, it's like, if you want to do something, go out and do it, because it's going to be for free anyway.
Yeah.
So just go and try it. Go pretend to sell coffee to somebody and see what happens.
Right. Justis, for somebody that is either a budding entrepreneur or a budding realtor, what's your piece of advice?
So in terms of real estate specifically, I tell people to get involved in the community you're in as much as possible. This is how you network, you meet people. So, you know, if you're not going to pay for leads or do anything, just get out in front of people. And honestly, this space here in the cafe was a great thing for me personally, because it allows people to meet me and Andrew and then ask questions. And then, but honestly, if it's just as an entrepreneur as a whole, I think if you have a passion that you really enjoy doing, I honestly think that you can make any career out of it. You have to find the level of financial comfort though, because you're not going to make, you know, $200,000 a year, maybe doing something like a small, like artsy, you know, shop, right? We joke that this is like our third child. This is why we both, you know, work outside of this.
Meaning we just spend money on it.
Yeah.
But I think you can be happy doing what you want in life, and you can create a job out of it. You just have to learn to not look at what other people are doing.
I love that too, because you're starting a business and you're full of spitfire and passion, and I'm gonna make it my every dream come true, carving these soapstone walruses my mom loves, and like, well, the passion is there, the spitfire is there, the way that you go about it is there, but the expectation needs to match that, and I love that encouragement, because like we were talking about having bad days, like that's a bad day when you realize what you are doing now doesn't really have a chance at rising to your level of expectation. And now you're confronted with a decision. What do I do? Do I lower my expectation? Do I raise my game? Am I just going to live my life in sadness and depression because I'm not going to make it work? What do I do? So I love that encouragement. Yeah. You mentioned about the community, and here you guys are at one point living in California, living life out there on the beach and with the water and stuff. But then you ended up coming back here to Bay City because you said, hey, Bay City needs good coffee. But here you are, still here in Bay City, still running this place, still running the roastery, still being a great real estate agent. Why here? Why stay here in this community when you've already kind of broken the seal and explored California and been other places? You guys just got back from South Carolina. You could go anywhere. Why put down roots here? Why invest here?
For me personally, I couldn't imagine raising a family anywhere else than Bay City. I think the community here is amazing. We have so much going on. I think we have one of the most charming historic districts in downtown in the state of Michigan. The water alone is just beautiful living. And I feel like growing up here, everyone took that for granted. Like they kind of forgot that we lived on the water, right?
Oh, by the way, we have a complete monopoly on the bay.
Yeah. And we never went to the beach when we were younger. Yeah. And I
don't think we were allowed to go to the beach.
We weren't allowed to go to the beach probably. But anywho, not only that, but outside of the energy that we feel being business owners here in the community, and the amount of people looking at Bay City now on the map in the state of Michigan, it's affordable, right? And when I say affordable, I don't want people thinking, gosh, it's such a cheap little town. Because honestly, our home values are very solid for this community, but it allows us to explore the world, right?
Yep.
We're not house poor because we have everything that we need in a home and a community that allows us to live and thrive, and our children to kind of, immerse themselves in. But then we can still go other places and visit them. And I think that that's really something special. And I don't think a lot of people get to do that when they live in areas that are just astronomical.
Yeah, I love that perspective of using this community to also put yourself in a position where you can explore other communities. You don't have to stay here because you're paying $7,000 a month for 100 square feet in some downtown. Like you're chained to that. But here you're saying we can have all the things we want in a hometown community, growing our family, building our businesses, but at the same time, that allows us to experience other places as well. Yeah. Andrew, what about you? Why stay here? Why invest here?
Yeah, I think that overall, I kind of look at it from a larger view of the state of Michigan. I think the state of Michigan, compared to lots of other states, is one of the best places to live when you think about access to natural resources, just like population density. Like I'm not a fan of the big city, right? Like I actually dislike lots of people around me. I prefer the small town, right? And so Michigan has so many of those communities that build up like the greater culture of the state. And even when you think about Traverse City, Grand Rapids, etc., people are always like, Bay City can be the next Traverse City. And I'm like, well, I mean, I actually believe that it could be in terms of economic tourism dollars, but Bay City's unique because of the water, because of its access to the bay, because of all year round activities, from, you know, boating to camping to golf to fishing to all these different things you can do here all year. And the other thing is, I've grown up in all different parts of Bay City. I've lived in all over this city, West Side, South End, this like everywhere. It's kind of odd when I think about like all the neighborhoods I've lived in. And the first neighborhood I lived in was right over off of Water. It was on Howard Street, which if you're not a Bay City person, you don't even know where Howard Street is. And where Uptown is, that was just the old shipping depot my whole life, right? And it was just busted out windows, massive just building where I was always like, what in the world is this thing? And so to see the growth and the investment from outside this community and inside this community trying to grow it gives me just tons of optimism, because it's like the family aspect is true and real, but also just from a business standpoint, it's like this is a great place to be, because in 5 years from now, think about 5 years ago, man. Like this is nothing like it was 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago when we started in 2010 here. But
and we moved back, and it was like, why are we moving back?
And when you think about just what's happened there and what's happened just throughout the city, and the amount of people talking about it, the amount of people that are trying to influence people to come here, you think about like people like you and what you've done with your brand and your voice for the city, and there's other people trying to do that too, which is fun, right? It's like there's more people interested in getting people excited about the brand of Bay City. And I don't think we still know what that is yet, but I think that there's enough smart people thinking about it and talking about it that at some point people are going to be like, we're going to be the next Bay City, you know? And like, I think that's the opportunity. And that's exciting to me.
I also just think our name of our town's super cute. Bay City, like it's cute.
Yeah, you can't get better brand name than that.
You really can't.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's kind of that entrepreneurial mindset in looking at the state of the community right now, in that if you wanted to get into Traverse City, if you wanted to get into Detroit, the amount of resources that you need in order to make something like that work right now are immense. You've run a successful restaurant elsewhere in the state, 5 other restaurants elsewhere in the state. You've got the capital, you've got the experience to go into a place like Traverse City or Detroit, and you're going to need to pay that overhead. You're going to need to crush it. People have been going to that record store or that restaurant for the past 25 years. You need to convince them to go to yours instead. I mean, there's a lot of challenges that come with that. But here in Bay City, my impression is that we're at this really critical moment of momentum, where more people are seeing the opportunity, more people are feeling that same kind of momentum. You see what's happening over on Midland Street, and it just seems like there's new and interesting businesses popping up over there all the time. And now is the time where you need to get in on that, because 5 years from now, you're going to be saying, man, I'm so glad that I started my thing 5 years ago, because I couldn't do it right now. And that's exciting. I mean, we think that people want perfect communities, and we don't really want perfect communities. We want communities with momentum and potential, and that are built for people. And like that vibe is contagious.
And
it is.
And I think seeing all these, we see a lot of younger people coming into the cafe too, outside of, the older generations. We've got like a really good mix here. But one thing that we've done that we really like, and seeing the energy in the community, is doing those pop-up markets for these businesses that are just starting out. They don't have a brick and mortar, and we're allowing them to use our space. But that's a whole next generation of people looking to stay rooted in the community.
Some of these
and
kids
it's so exciting.
They're like 20 years old. And I'm like, dude, I started Populace when I was 22.
We were 22.
22.
Oh, wow.
And I think like when I talk to people now, when they're like 20, 21, 22, 23, starting a business, I'm like, yes, like what can we do?
Yeah.
Because they're honestly, and this is not anything against Bay City. I think it was just a sign of the times, because it was 2010. everybody was like, don't start a business.
Yeah.
Don't even try.
We don't need coffee here.
Yeah.
We don't. Why is there another cafe? Why is it,
the bottom just fell out of the world. And here comes this guy saying, hey, I want to
from California.
I'm from California and I want to serve you good coffee.
And I was doing like pour over, and they're like, you're just pouring water over coffee. I was like, yeah, it's the new thing. Like, I look back at that sometimes, I'm like, oh my God,
everybody's doing it, man.
But if I wasn't 22, I wouldn't have had the guts to do it.
It's true.
Right.
Most of the time, like I wouldn't do that now starting out. So it's like these kids that are like 18, 19, 20, even some of them younger, starting real businesses and actually making money. It's like, we need to figure out a way to show them that they can do it here and be successful.
And stay.
And even if they don't stay here, like just building something here to show someone else that it can be done. I think that's how you build momentum, right? Like, 'cause even in big cities where lots of stuff's happening, things come and go.
Yep.
We just need things to get moving, and some of the stuff's going to fall and some of it's going to fail. It doesn't mean the city's going to shit, because the boutique goes out of business or the one place goes out of business. That's the way it works.
We notice it on a higher level because you think of Detroit, you've got a million pizza places. One goes down, unless it's been around for 200 years and everybody eats there. Like you're not going to necessarily notice, but we notice here because we exist on a smaller scale. And I love your point of saying, like, this is the nature of business. It's the nature of life. It's the nature of how things go. It's not a business failing indicative of a failure of the community. It comes par for the course. And so I love what you guys are doing here with your pop-ups on Saturdays, I believe. And they're like, here's Pretzel Prize selling her pretzels, and here's Gina saying, I'm going to do my tarot card readings and things like that. And on the outside, it's like, oh, this is a cool little pop-up thing where I can go and buy things. But on a deeper level, it's a signal to the community and those people saying, we want to plant these seeds now so that Pretzel Prize moves into her own building in 5 years, or Gina moves into her own place in 5 years, or this is the next generation, the next wave of people saying, I have something unique I can contribute to the community. And it's up to us as the community now to really till the soil and create an environment where that can happen. Because if we don't, then we wake up in 10 years and we're like, well, we had so much momentum a decade ago, but what happened? And then we start placing blame when we could have said, hey, I want to help you, new business person, get up and going.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think with the whole space and allowing them to come in, it's also a way of us like saying thank you to the community, because if it weren't for the community of Bay City, sorry, I don't know how we would have survived COVID.
Why do you say that?
I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
Because it was like one of the scariest things, having to shut the door and having everybody in the community basically reach out, and they came and ordered coffee as a pop-up, and they supported our baristas, right? Andrew and I don't live off the coffee shop, so it wasn't even about us. It was about our staff, and Bay City hugged us during that time. And we're both like eternally grateful for that. And that also is a reason why we're still so rooted in the community, and why we want to be that for other small businesses.
I love that you told that story. The hug part of it is really what connected with me, because you can look at countless communities on paper and make an A, B, C chart, strengths and weaknesses, and then weigh it all on paper and like, this is better, and this place is better, this place is better. But the things that you can't touch, that feeling of community, that feeling of togetherness, when a community does face a challenge, can it come together and does it? Those to me are the most powerful things. Those are the reasons why you say here, not there, is because it makes you feel a way. The people make you feel a way. You feel supported. You feel like you can get a hug from strangers and a family. And it's beautiful. I think that you guys both have found that here, especially considering you could have stayed in California. You could have come back and been really disappointed and said, well, everything was pretty much already checked off over in California, let's head back over there.
Right.
But instead you said, hey, this is a place where there is potential. This is home to us. There's so much more that we can contribute here. And you have done that. And I want to thank you guys for doing that from me as a human. Yeah.
Can I just say one thing really quick?
Yes, please do.
Before I forget. So to talk really quickly about COVID, one thing I learned about the city of Bay City, the people here, and you probably had seen this more, but I really, my eyes got opened up to it, and I am amazed by it still to this day. The amount of arguing that happens amongst the citizens is amazing, because what it shows is it shows passion. Whether you agree with whatever big thing we're talking about, right? Like I'll say the B word, right? Bridges and pole, whatever. The fact that people even care enough to give their opinion is so exciting. And it's really exhilarating. Like if you read these long posts that people write in response to the way they're feeling about their town, even if it's against your opinion or indifferent, I just love it. And so I think that's one thing I learned from out of the COVID experience is the people here are so passionate about their town
and their community.
And for better or worse, they do. They care about this place. And even if they want, I mean, you don't say, you see the people that are like, just so down on the officials and everybody that runs the town. But if they didn't care, they wouldn't say anything.
They all care.
And so I love it.
Yeah, it's very similar to a family. That if you start your family thinking that everything's going to be perfect, that you won't ever have challenges or issues, you're going to get a rude wake up call probably the next day, and you're going to say, "Wow, this isn't really what I thought it was." But if you come into it with that healthy perspective of communities are complicated. And lots of people should care about lots of different things. And we will not agree, but how can we work through those disagreements so that we can end up in the place we all want to end up with is a better community. And I think your point is so well placed in saying, yes, we do have to talk about the nitty gritty details about why we disagree and our opinions and how we think we should move forward. But starting at that place of, I get that you say that because you care about this place, and I do too. I think it's the most beautiful place to start in any sort of community conversation is just putting that out on the table and saying, do you care about this place? Yes, I do too. Let's start this conversation from that place as opposed to let's go to war and get all messy. It's so gross. Speaking of community, you guys are doing something super cool here with a brand new roast.
Oh, yes.
Tell me about this glorious thing right here.
So, as you know, we're a roaster first and foremost. So when we started Populace Coffee, we roast and source coffees from all over the world. And honestly, prior to COVID, we had really only done special custom packaging and labels with specific partners. We didn't really just open it up. And during COVID, we started this program called Small Business Support, and we had like 250 businesses at one point.
I think I had one.
You probably did.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to some people. They're like, well, "You made us a bag." I'm like, "Yeah."
I didn't really sell any of the coffee, but I thought it was just cool.
Not everybody did. Like there were some that did. There were more hospitality businesses, but we opened it up to anybody. And so from that, we just kind of like kept this sort of product, if you will, as an option. And we partnered with Conservancy. Like sustainability is a big part of our mission here, trying to work with Saginaw Bay Land Conservancy, Detroit, Coquitlam Watershed, Little Traverse Bay. Like we work with these organizations throughout the state that really help to conserve land and water, et cetera. And so, this was sort of a natural, like, hey, let's work together, create this product to help. And essentially what it is it's our main blend. It's our house blend. It's what the first blend I ever created 13 and a half years ago, and it's still our number one product.
Heck yeah.
But we just used the, the branding to kind of help tell the story
It's
a little bit.
so cute.
I know.
Hey, Bay City.
I just love this so much. I mean, it's just for the people listening to this that may not have heard the explanation for the name was we ended up with Hey Bay City because we wanted a friendly invitation. Mm-hmm. We wanted the first thing that people saw to be a friendly hello, and the idea that here's Hey Bay City and the logo and this friendly invitation on something like coffee that really does cultivate a situation like that where you do get to invite people into this space, and you get to invite them into conversations, and you get to hear their stories, and you get to know them as people, and this becomes a really special place because of the people and because of the stories. It's not, like you said earlier, Andrew, it's not really just about coffee. It's about all of the things that coffee centers around, and I love this because it is kind of symbolic of what we're trying to do with Hey Bay City, inviting people in from outside of the community, inviting people from inside the community to get to know their community on a deeper level. I mean, it's just so cool. So if people are like, man, I want a bag of Hey Bay City coffee, when and where can people purchase that?
So we'll have it available here in the cafe, and then we're at 810 Saginaw Street.
Yeah, because people always ask in the comments, they're like, you should tell us the address.
Yeah, 810 Saginaw Street. We're right
next to Old City Hall.
Next to Oach. If you know what that is, then you know where we are probably. But
okay.
And then it'll be, I think, online if you want it to be.
Heck yeah, I want it
whatever
to be
you
online.
want.
Yeah, we'll put it right on the site.
I want you to put it online.
Yeah, we'll link it, and then we'll just we process orders every day. So anybody that buys it, it'll get shipped out typically the next business day. So
very cool. As an aside, do you guys want to talk about your maybe future podcast or no?
Yeah,
you can.
We can.
Okay, so to kind of tag along with this idea of you guys being a husband-wife entrepreneur, about the coffee, bringing people together, about sharing stories and stuff. When we were talking about recording this episode, you guys gave me a little bit of news. There's a project coming down the line. Who wants to spill the beans? Justis? Okay, Justis, spill those beans.
So Andrew and I, obviously, we've done a lot in 13 years. A lot of hurdles, a lot of falling in big potholes. It's like
that's a Michigan joke.
I was going to say, that's a Michigan joke. And we both felt like it would be really cool to kind of share our story on a much deeper level, and how we've worked through things, and kind of talk about the aspect of business and what it's like juggling businesses and children and, all of those things. And it's not as glamorous as it looks sometimes. And I think that having conversations and talking about the rawness of it is super important, because obviously Instagram shows one thing, and I'm a pretty open book when it comes to, I'm going to tell somebody really the full story if they ask. And I think that this podcast will give us a way to kind of like share all of it.
Very cool.
So yeah, that's the idea, is that we're going to create a podcast that just features that as the main content source. Is basically just us and our story about business, life, and kids, and also trying to be in a relationship, because when you're husband and wife and you're partners and you're trying to take care of children and businesses, sometimes you forget that you also have to be
nurturing to your relationship.
Partners, and you have to love each other, and you have to work at that. And you'll learn in the podcast how difficult it was for me to learn that. And there's a lot of things that I'm not an open book. I'm usually pretty reserved and quiet, unless you put a microphone in front of my face. Mm-hmm. If you're at our wedding, you'll know what's up. But yeah, I think that's for us. We just want to kind of tell our story, and we've just never really done that before. And I think we have some cool stuff to say.
Exciting. I love that perspective. I mean, the world has more than its fair share of every podcast that will tell you how to hack your business and hack your life, and you need to do this, and you need to wake up at 2:30 and eat wallaby intestine in order to successfully. And like we have those podcasts, but this is such a critical element to that. If yes, your business, but how does your relationship with your partner exist within the realm of this business, and your kids and your family, and how do those things go together? I mean, those make or break not only your business, but your relationship and your family, and thus your entire life. And if we don't figure those out, lots of people run into problems and challenges, and bottom falls out, and you're like, man, I just wish I would have got that advice before. Well, like while I could have done something about it, but now I'm trying to pick up the pieces. So I'm excited to hear your perspective. I'm going to be listening to every episode because I need it. so excited. So stay tuned to that. If folks, if you're listening at home, follow Andrew, follow Justis on social media. I'm sure they'll be rolling it out, announcing that. If you have not ever stopped by Populace, you need to. One, to buy some amazing coffee, but then also buy a bag of this Hey Bay City blend. It's so cool. And before I let you guys go, I just want to say thank you to both of you for one, just your investment here in this community, and how engaged both of you are and enthusiastic you are about really building the potential here and realizing that, and saying, hey, we got to start doing this dirty work now to help this next wave of future entrepreneurs. But then more than that, just being great humans. You're both a delight to talk to work with. We have so many folks like you in this community, and that's why this effort is so important. But I want to thank you for being two of those folks with great stories, great personalities, great lives, great things to say, and just all around great human beings. So thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you so much, Justis, for being on this podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Also, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you weren't here telling these stories, nobody would know.
So thank you.
Because honestly, when you got hired to do this job with the chamber, I was so excited because I know how passionate you are and how good you are at telling stories. And there's always these things when you think about business that's like, if you want to build a brand, you got to do this and do that, right? But really, you have to tell stories.
Yep.
And you have to be
so good.
And you have to do it honestly. And I think that this format is a perfect way to do it. And so thank you. From both of us.
Thank you for being one of the good ones.
Well, on that bashful note, thanks everybody for listening to the Hey Bay City podcast. Yeah, thanks, Phil.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Woo.
Awesome. You guys are